Hi, I'm Brenda Yoho, and welcome to Solution Saturday. I want to talk today a little bit about a problem, which I believe that is something that we all have. It's a problem we have when we really don't know what to say, when we're faced with issues that people are facing. And maybe sometimes we just don't really understand the problem that they have. And sometimes, we're trying to find the right words, but we really don't know what to say. One of those examples is if when someone passes away, grief, and how to comfort them and what to say when someone's lost someone, especially if it's a child. I know I've always had such a hard time with, you know, being able to say something to someone who's lost someone and they're full of all those emotions and you are too. And what's the right words to say when you're facing that kind of a situation? We're not always prepared for situations that we don't know anything about. And one of those things can be trauma, especially if we don't know what the trauma is. And I'll give an example with my own personal issues that I have. I know I've talked about that I have a traumatic brain injury. And that traumatic brain injury happened in 2010. And, that's just one of the challenges that I've faced in life. I've faced some other things as well. I've overcame breast cancer. Um, I when I was diagnosed with that, um, it it was it was shocking. When you get those diagnoses and you're trying to figure out what am I gonna do? How am I gonna handle this? And um, you find ways for yourself to cope with it, but I don't know about you, but I always try to find ways. I want my family to be able to cope with it too, with the minimal amount of heartache or damage or um, feeling like that they need to do something for me. Um, I guess I consider myself, I'm always the fixer, so even when um I am facing something that I'm struggling in, even though I look like I have it all together and everything's good and everything's fine, it may not always be. I just want to make sure that I'm fixing it for everybody else as well. So, for an example, in my book, Lead with Two Rules, Feeling Good and Feeling Safe, we talk a little bit about trauma and we talk a little bit about mental health and we talk about, different things that people are dealing with and facing. And our school system right now is facing a lot of different things, and trauma is a number one thing that they're facing each day. And maybe not always a traumatic brain injury, but they are facing some issues that they're having to deal with, and trauma is a big thing. And they may not always know what to do, what to say, how to respond, how to handle a situation. So I'm going to just walk through a traumatic brain injury, and I'm just going to talk about, what it's like to have a traumatic brain injury and some of the things that maybe people have said and maybe some of the things that we shouldn't say or we shouldn't do when someone has an injury, but we feel like that's the right thing to say. Um, it was so ironic for me that when I was principal, I came back to school and I had a student who had a traumatic brain injury, and people weren't understanding him, but I was early in my diagnosis as well, and I was understanding and getting what he was saying. And it's important for people to know that sometimes the things that we say can be triggers for individuals and in their healing process. So when we are faced with situations where we're trying to figure out what we want to say and what we want to do, one of the things that I want to bring to our attention is that before you say, before you do, just like I tell the kids, always ask yourself the questions and about feeling good and feeling safe, because we don't know everybody's story. And I'm hoping that through reading the book and through all the conversations that I've had, that you're starting to figure out that the more we know, the more we can understand how to help each other, because we all have a story. And it's one one of the things that I want to just tell you, that if you look at me, it doesn't look like there's anything wrong with me. You would never know that I have a traumatic brain injury. How could you tell? You can't see my brain. You can just see how I look. And you couldn't tell right now that most of my teeth were knocked out, and then I had this huge scar down the side of my face. Surgeons did a great job. And we have wonderful medical people who can do magical things. I always say that I have the Hollywood smile. I could go to Hollywood and do all kinds of scenes now because I have these wonderful teeth now. And you could never tell that I had such a significant injury that was so life-threatening, but I did. And when people know the story and when they hear the story, they'll say something like, you're really lucky. You're really lucky you survived that accident. That was horrible. Yeah, we're lucky that we did. We're very lucky that we survived that crash. That was something to have a semi crash into your car. It really is. And to not have someone die. 4 people came out of that car crash alive. And I had the most significant injuries. But each one of the individuals involved in that accident has a story that I'm not able to share because I don't know how they feel each day. But I do want to let you know that even though that happened in 2010, each one of them has something about that day that they relive, I think, each day. Maybe not each day, but many days. My daughter had surgeries on her foot and she still has pain. She can't walk without pain. My friend has issues with her wrist and she's a hairdresser. That's her livelihood. My granddaughter was 2 at the time. Not a scratch on her. She got out of that accident with no injuries whatsoever. However, she's terrified to drive. And why? I think it goes back to that accident. I really do. So when people say you're lucky, yeah, we're lucky. But when I think about being lucky, my entire life changed that day. My brain injury resulted in a long journey of healing, and it takes your brain 5 years to heal. And I had to go through a lot. I had to learn how to really talk, and I got so frustrated I didn't even finish all of my therapy. So I do have some issues sometimes with my speech because of not finishing all of my therapy. My speech therapy, I didn't finish all of that, so I have issues sometimes. So that's a big problem for me, as I enjoy speaking and talking, but At times, I will have some issues. Um, I have no sense of smell or taste, really. It comes and goes. I'll have a little bit here and there. And my processing, my cognitive skills are a little more declined, and that's an issue for me. My executive functions, I don't process as fast as I used to. There's some other deficits that I have, but I've been able to manage and overcome a lot of different things. I am not intelligent, as you can tell in all of the writings that I do and all of the speaking that I do, and how I carry myself, which will bring me to another point that I'll make in just a few minutes. But they're there. One of the other things that's been affected, I have no emotions. The emotions that I have been changed. So, like if you see something that brings the emotion to you that you feel like you need to cry, I can't do that. I haven't cried since before the accident. So, that's hard for me. It's hard for me to not be able to have all those expressions. Um, I can laugh in things now because I know that I'm supposed to do all of those things, because luckily for me I can remember all those things. So I know I need to do those things, and I can do those things, but it's not a genuine feeling. Um, in the beginning, the only feeling that I had that was prevalent was anger. That was the main emotion that I was showing. That's the only one that I had. That has since changed drastically, but um, that was the only emotion that I had. The memory, my middle school kids, they noticed that right off immediately that I was different. I knew all of my kids' names, and I would address them all the time by their first name. Often I knew their birthdays as well. I couldn't do it anymore. That bothered me a great deal. Um, I I changed. I was definitely changed, and I felt like um, the job and my purpose of who I was taken that day, because the job that I loved to do and I wanted to do for the rest of my life, I wanted to retire as a principal. And I know some of you may think, being a middle school principal, oh my gosh, that woman has to be crazy. I loved it. I loved being a middle school principal. I really did. It was the best job. I loved being an elementary principal too. That was a great job too. I had some great people I worked with, but being a principal was my favorite job, and I loved it. Um, I loved it. And so one of the things that you shouldn't say to someone is when they've suffered some kind of traumatic event that they've survived is, "You're so lucky." I think I would avoid that. I think that can trigger some other things for them, which brings them to some things that yeah, I'm lucky, but I can't do these things. Um, and also talking to them about, especially a traumatic brain injury, about memory. Oh yeah, I know what you mean. I have a poor memory too. I can't remember this. As we get older, we start to lose some of our memories and stuff. It's different. Um, it's different for a traumatic brain injured person. We cannot retain a lot of things. Um, and it's much different for us. And with our brains, with our injury, we are at a higher risk for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease and all those other injuries, all those other diseases that affect the brain. We're at a higher risk, and we know that. And it's when someone talks about memory, it just triggers us with thinking, yeah, but okay, but you don't know, and it, it it's huge. Another thing is, it was frustrating for me. Um, I was working really hard to really fit back in and to be part of my educational community and doing my job and things, but I knew I wasn't the person that I was before, and I have very, very high standards. I do. I don't expect anybody to do things I wouldn't expect myself to do. And to hear people say, "You look fine. You're doing fine. You are just fine. There's nothing wrong with you." Yes, there is. There is. As I said, you can't see that there's anything wrong with me, but there is. So when somebody has been injured and they're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder or something like that, um, it's telling them they look fine, they look good, you're doing good, eh, we can't just brush it off because there's a lot more going on with them than just that. So that's another thing I think I would skip not saying to them. And I think one of the things too I wouldn't say to them, if their injuries happened, as in my case back in 2010, that's a long time. I should be over it, right? Get over it. No. Mm-mm. We don't get over it. Um, I will have a traumatic brain injury for the rest of my life. It is something that will never go away. It is something that I go to the doctor. I was up until this year going every 6 months to see my neurologist and working on our plans. And I've been doing, I have a phenomenal medical team. And now we just reduced it down to once a year. And we're trying to reduce some of the medications that I'm taking, mainly because I've retired from education. I started backing away from a lot of the things that I was doing. My life's changed a little bit, so I don't have all those extra stresses in life. My husband's retired now, and we've sold his shop, and we're going to be changing our lifestyle a little bit, trying to get that adjusted. What's that going to look like for us? Um, and that's a great thing. It's a good thing. But don't rush people with their healing process because sometimes it just doesn't go away. It's always going to be there. So don't shame them into it's time to get over it. It's time to move on. And also shaming them into saying, let me do that for you. It makes them think that they can't do something. So, offer help always and support, but don't shame them into thinking that they're not good enough to do things or they can't do things. And, there's so much that we can learn about how another person is feeling and the words that we're saying. I've always said we have a lot of power in our words, and we do, in the things that we say and the things that we do. And that's why I always ask those two questions, those questions with our two rules, feeling good and feeling safe. And that's why we have to keep that approach in everything throughout our entire lives. It's not just something that I want to teach to kids just for the school years, it's for life. We always want to help other people to feel good and to feel safe, because when you're faced with some difficulties, as I said, with this traumatic brain injury that happened, it's tough. It's a tough process. It's a tough thing. It changes who you are. It really does. And if people do not go with it and learn to adapt and learn to process and do things a little differently. They can get trapped into a cycle of just feeling sorry for themselves and feeling so depressed that it can be so isolating and so they just don't ever want to do anything. And I'm not going to tell you, I didn't have a couple days like that. I did. I wasn't sure what my life was going to be like. I was driving in patterns because I didn't know any other way to get to places. The very first time I went to a grocery store, I walked in, I looked at everything, and I walked back out. It was overwhelming. I couldn't go in. There was too much. And I'm going to tell you, I still struggle with, I don't go out a lot. I struggle with having lots of people because of the memory thing. I'm so afraid that there'll be people there and I won't acknowledge them, and they'll think that I'm being rude to them, and they'll think that I didn't acknowledge them, and they'll think that I didn't say hello to them or I ignored them or something. And it's just because I didn't process and remember who they were. So I just avoided. Now my husband and I will go on vacation and stuff, and we'll go out and do things together, and go to different places and stuff. But here locally, I don't, because I'm afraid of hurting someone and not making them feel good because of my deficits, because they don't understand my story, because I look like there's nothing wrong with me, but I have some memory issues. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit about the problem of we don't always know what to say and do when someone has an issue, and especially when we don't know they have an issue. So my point and solution to this is to always get to know the other person and the story that they have. Always know that if someone's acting differently than they did before, if you knew them and they acted differently, don't just assume that they're not acknowledging you because you've done something, or that they're ignoring you, or just go up to them and reintroduce yourself. Hi, I'm Carol. I don't know if you remember me, but I was at Southwest with you, or I was at Northridge with you, or I was at Edison with you, or I was at Fraser with you, or I was at Pinecrest with you. Just reintroduce yourself and let them know that you are who you are, and let them say, "Oh, I'm so glad that you came over. I didn't recognize you." Just start the conversation, because they're not doing it on purpose. They're doing it because really there might be something wrong. And don't be afraid to reintroduce yourself and to start a conversation. But please remember to not re-trigger by saying some of the things we talked about in this video about, "Oh, you look just fine. Oh, that accident happened when? Oh, it's time to get over it." Yeah, no, don't do things like that. But be supportive, help them to feel good, help them to feel safe, and be part of the solution, because we all have a story to tell, and our stories are not always available for others to read. Sometimes we have to share them with others. So, I'll see you next Saturday on Solution Saturday. And forgive me if I miss a couple of Saturdays, because life gets a little busy around a busy summer life with grandchildren. And I do my very best to try to get here as often as I can. And I hope I will see you again here, and reach out to me anytime that you want if you have something you would like for me to talk about, and I surely will do so. Thank you. I'll see you next time. Thanks.